Hey everyone! Today's topic of discussion is resource generation. In many TCGs, there is a resource, or a price you must pay in order to use the cards in your hand and deck. Able Card Game is no different, and I have settled on a resource system that has been working well in the games I have tested. Resource generation is one of those things worth spending some time on, as it is an essential game mechanic that can make a big difference to the feel of your game and in the way in which it flows. In some games, the resource mechanic is gems, coins, or something that you can accrue over time. In other games, resources are scattered throughout your deck. Sometimes the cards themselves play a secondary role of being a resource. And I've seen a few homemade TCGs approach it this way, which I think is really clever. Or maybe resources are generated by rolling dice in order to determine what resources you get, like in a board game such as Settlers of Catan. Today I want to talk to you about why I've chosen a particular method for my game and the reasons I felt the need to improve this part of my game. So to remind you of my background, I have played and enjoyed Hearthstone, Pokemon, Magic the Gathering and Yu-Gi-Oh! And each game deals with resource management differently. In Hearthstone you accrue one resource each turn that can be used for all of your cards and it maxes out at 10 resource points. These resources are called mana. In Pokemon, you have to draw energy cards from your deck. These get attached to Pokemon to let them attack and use their abilities. There are a number of ways to find energy cards more quickly. In Magic the Gathering, you include what are called lands in your deck. These are the resources for playing cards. There are different types of lands that need to be used as a resource, making some cards easy to play and others far more difficult. In Yu-Gi-Oh! You need to sacrifice your own weaker creatures to play bigger and better ones. There are cards that search for monsters to put directly on the battlefield, but other than that, there isn't a dedicated resource like in the games already mentioned. Now that's an oversimplified description of some popular games and the mechanics they use, so let's take a look at Able now. My game has developed over the course of the last few years. At first I decided that each player would gain one resource each turn that grew to 2 and then 3 and so on with each consecutive turn. I used dice to show how many resource points could be used. One problem was that I always forgot to change the dice up, and the other was that there wasn't much decision making involved in the generation of resources, making the games feel a little bit bland at times. Next, I created creature and action points. These separated the resources into two different distinct types. One that would be used for playing creatures, and the other that would be used for actions. This was something to consider when building decks, as I needed to think about the amount of each resource I would need, and then I would shuffle them into the decks. When the points were drawn, they could be played out and used as a resource. The main downside of this method is that when you didn't draw the resources from your deck, you couldn't play any of your cards, and so occasionally games felt really bad and unenjoyable. This is what can happen in Magic the Gathering, and it can be a little bit frustrating at times, as the resource is based on the draw of a card. So the final iteration of the design looked to improve upon what I had tried in the past, and by merging the two ideas together, I came up with the following solution. Each player has access to creature and action points, and rather than shuffling them into the decks during their turn, players are able to choose if they want to add a creature point or an action point to their resource pool. What this does is ensure that both players will always have resources to use, and that the resources will steadily grow throughout the game, allowing players to play stronger cards as the game progresses. It also has some strategy attached though, as the player must choose if they want a creature point or an action point. It makes players make a decision that could end up being a key factor of the game. Players are required to think ahead about what resource is going to be most beneficial to them based on the cards in their hand and deck, and based on the cards they want to play in future turns. This has made games more exciting and interesting, and you don't have the downside of not drawing what you need. It also helped with the story element of my game. As you control a hero that is basically your character in the game, each time you play a creature or action point, it represents how you as the hero are growing stronger. If you are building up creature points, your hero is developing the skills needed to lead an army of creatures. And as you get more action points, it is like your hero is becoming more capable of making those big decisions. To me, it's like most stories we love and can relate to. Your hero usually starts off quite weak and is lacking in their ability, but by the end of the story, the hero emerges strong and victorious. Well, that's how I like to think about it anyway. The only downside I can see with this resource method is that a player could forget to choose a point, but hopefully as they get used to the game it becomes second nature. I've made the sequence of events during each player's turn as simple as possible to try and accommodate for this. Basically, each turn there are 4 main things to remember. During your turn, you 1. Draw a card, 2. Play a point, 3. Battle your opponent, and at all times remember traps and triggers. I've set the game up this way to try and avoid having too many turn phases and complex back and forths between players. During your turn, you always do the same things, and your opponent can't respond until their turn. This is similar to chess in the sense that one person makes a move, then the next player responds. Now, there are a few occasions where this is not the case, and that's why it's important to remember traps and triggers at all times during a game. Ever since making these changes to the resource system, my game has really started to shine. Battles feel like they go back and forth and both players have a chance to win. I hope you enjoyed hearing my thoughts on resources, and I would love to know what you think about resource management in TCGs in general, in your own games, or in Able. Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe if you would like to support this channel, and I'll see you next time.